But welcome to our recovery webinar. Today we're going to chat about, we'll start with tissue and joint mobilization, but then Chris Haig, he'll chat about the psychology of recovery, and then Derek will talk about Normatec boots and the mechanisms that might help recovery. And then Becca is leading like a core mobility recovery session on Friday and potentially subsequent Fridays, and we'll chat about that a little bit. And then everybody feel free to chime in or ask questions or bring up any other aspects of recovery that you want to talk about. That's the whole point of these webinars. I know that some people posted questions on the Slack, and we will chat about those also. But we can get started with tissue and joint mobilization. The idea here is that focusing on your body, on your muscles, the different body parts, especially the legs and glutes and hips, and being aware of hot spots or niggles or soreness, being cognizant of that and addressing future hot spots is wise. So when we train, our muscles, they tear. So we have micro tears, and this leads to delayed onset muscle soreness. Everybody knows that feeling. You do a 70.3 or a hard workout or a lifting session. Leg day is notorious for leading to sore muscles afterwards. That's largely due to micro tears in the muscle, and then the body's sort of inflammatory response to that. And we want to identify the difference between normal soreness, which might be achy, it might be more global, it might be your whole leg, and contrast that with hot spots. And hot spots are not necessarily normal delayed onset muscle soreness. It might be a sharper pain. It might involve, compression against a nerve, so the pain might radiate. And the idea is you feel this pain when you apply moderate pressure. So, I know that in the emails I talked about, sort of we're using the Professional's Guide to Strength and Conditioning, which is sort of the NCAA's the main book that NCAA coaches use, and it's cutting edge. It stays up to date on that sort of the latest science and our understanding of, is stretching good or bad, like what protocols are good for recovery. And as part of that, they actually appeal to the book, The Supple Leopard, which is why I mentioned it in the email. So a lot of what we're talking about here can be found in The Supple Leopard or the Professional's Guide to Strength and Conditioning. But part of what is addressed in those texts are hot spots. And the idea is that every day you kind of scan your body, you kind of massage it and feel it, and you assess whether or not there are some atypical hot spots. And you have to, it's good to apply substantial pressure. This isn't just like light, how skin surface pressure. This is, you want to put, good kind of moderate pressure on there, and we'll talk about ways to do that. But the idea is that you apply pressure and it unveils some of these hot spots. And for example, in the quads, if you feel a hot spot, we want to address it. And often a hot spot can be due to fluid buildup around this lymph and, plasma that comes out of sort of the blood, and also the inflammatory response of the body, sort of sending plasma to areas that have experienced trauma to deliver things like white blood cells and growth factors and things to actually help the muscles recover. So inflammation is okay, but there is a limit, and it's possible that you can experience too much inflammation. There's too much lymph around there, and with our lymphatic system, that is the system that sort of removes waste and metabolites and other sort of proteins and cells that build up after exercise and are part of this inflammatory response. So we want to get that out of the way. So a good way to do that, and a good protocol after a hard workout especially, is to do things like foam roll, or again, if you have a hot spot, you want to apply pressure to that. And what that does is that loosens up some of the fascia, and it also compresses that lymph, so it gets that lymph, that fluid buildup moving. And a great way to get that fluid moving is through contracting your muscles. So one protocol involves contracting and relaxing. So say you're feeling, your quads are inflamed, and you have a hot spot on there. A good thing to do would be to sort of flex your quad and then relax it, and then apply pressure with a ball, like a lacrosse ball, or this looks like, I don't know, some type of really hard ball right there. A foam roller, a boomstick, other things. And the idea is you contract it for 4 or 5 seconds, and then you relax, and then you get that instrument in there. And what that's doing is it's flushing out the lymph and all this interstitial fluid, and it's delivering new blood and new nutrients to these muscles. And that is what we want. What we don't want is doing a hard workout, sitting, then you have like all the different components of the muscle, like the fascia sort of congealing and pasting against the muscles and the skin and the tendons. We want blood flow there, and we want to maintain a good range of motion in the joints sort of surrounding the soft tissue. And this helps with that. And one of my favorite protocols is foam rolling. And I know we often talk about this, but this is such a good thing to do after hard workouts, or even after just kind of sitting for a while. And the reason is because it can break up fascia. It can sort of calm and relax these tight muscles that might be the result of a really hard workout. A tired muscle might want to tighten up a little bit, and we don't want tense muscles, and we don't want just fluid building up around these muscles and lymph that's just not moving and not clearing out that waste and blocking out good new blood flow and good new lymph to kind of help incite recovery into these muscles and remove the sort of the waste from them. So obviously with foam rolling, there are many different types of foam rollers, and the idea is you kind of sit on them or lean on them or lay on them, and you roll them up and down your muscles, your hamstrings, your glutes, your quads, your calves, your shoulder, delts, lats, etc. And we want to apply firm pressure. But in all of these protocols, when we think about intensity, like there is an intensity to stretching, there is an intensity to foam rolling and massage. We want to strive for, you want good posture, and you want to do it at an intensity that allows you to breathe calmly and deeply. You don't want to be like applying so much pressure and experiencing so much pain that you're like, because then the muscles aren't going to relax. And breathing is so inextricable with parasympathetic nervous system and enabling the muscles to relax, that we want to strive for firm pressure, but one that still enables you to breathe deeply. So again, foam rolling obviously can it's a form of self-myofascial release. So again, you have fascia surrounding the muscle bellies and the muscle fascicles, and that can literally stick to the skin and to each other. We want to sort of release all that so that you experience a good, better range of motion. But a new study that is pretty darn powerful was just, well, it was published a couple of years ago now, but they established that foam rolling increases circulation in a non-trivial manner. So in this study, they had 21 college-age students who were moderately active and healthy foam roll. And they foam rolled on sort of the outer thigh. And the protocol they used was 3 by 45 seconds of foam rolling with 20 seconds rest in between. So what is that? So that's 2 minutes, 15 seconds total of foam rolling on the outer thigh. And immediately thereafter, I guess one minute thereafter, they measured blood flow, so like Vmax, and it was approximately 80% higher rate of blood flow 1 minute after the foam rolling session. But more interestingly, 30 minutes after, there was 53% more blood flow, relatively speaking, compared to baseline blood flow. That's a lot. And so this is good evidence that foam rolling will increase circulation to the muscles and the body parts, the soft tissue, for a period of time after you foam roll. So foam rolling is good. There is a lot of evidence that it can enhance recovery, probably even more than Normatec boots, as we'll kind of chat about later. Again, protocols for foam rolling, focus on one muscle group at a time, apply pressure in a way that still enables you to belly breathe. And when we think about how long you should be doing it, you want to do it until you feel a release of tension. So until you feel that fascia sort of come apart, or you feel like a desensitization of pain, and you feel some relief. And I put in the protocol in the study that they used, and 3 by 45 seconds with 20 seconds of rest in between, and that worked out well. Does anybody have any questions before we move on about foam rolling or how this all relates to recovery so far? Nope. Then we'll
Well, just one thing to emphasize when you're foam rolling is to make sure that you're going slowly. You see a lot of people do foam rolling and they're going super quickly, just kind of to avoid the pain. But the slower you go, the more release you get. So make sure that once you find a hot spot, that you stay on that hot spot for at least 30 seconds to be able to get that release that you're wanting.
Yeah, that's a good point for sure. And then I wanted to talk about, just so everybody could kind of understand exactly what's going on when we talk about myofascial release. So here is skeletal muscle. You can see, so this muscle is completely basically encased in just fascia. So it's this, if you're eating a steak or something, that sort of fibrous part that you often see if you cut into, I don't know, a T-bone steak, that's fascia. So we have it covering the entire muscle. So this is basically up and touching the skin. And one good thing to think about fascia and how it should interact with skin, if you just take your 2 fingers and go like this over the top of your hand, you can kind of see your skin moving back and forth, gliding over, your fingers and the bones and everything. That's what we want. And what happens is oftentimes after a hard workout, the fascia can start sticking. So this fascia is sticking to each other, it's sticking to your skin. It's kind of, it can be interfering with like nerve conduction, and it can negatively impact your range of motion and things like that. So what we want to do is we want to loosen all of this up. So we want the skin to slide over the fascia, and the connective tissue all of this should slide easily over one another. If it's glued together, you're going to feel pain. You're not going to be able to move as well. The lymph and everything isn't going to be able to move through everything as efficiently. So we want to break up these adhesions. Areas with a lot of fascia that are kind of good to work around, different joints include the ankles, the hips, the shoulders, knees. Um, and again, foam rolling can help. And on more of a surface level, instrument-assisted soft tissue mobilization is a good protocol. So you might have gone to a PT and they've used like a scraper to kind of scrape over your skin in areas that are inflamed or that are sore or that have hot spots. And you can use anything with a beveled edge, spatula, butter knife, etc. But again, the idea is to kind of loosen everything up, including the fascia. And sort of related to the last part of so kinesio taping is an interesting kind of newer protocol. And when this first came out, I did not understand why it was beneficial. Because, when I was in high school, kinesio taping and even college, I'm trying to remember if did we have K-tape in college? I can't remember. But I think we did. But in high school, K-tape didn't exist, or it certainly didn't exist at when I was running back then. But it was just athletic tape. And athletic tape, the idea is to prevent movement. So, you wrap your ankle if you're experiencing ankle pain or an ankle sprain to decrease the range of motion. And, normal athletic tape, it doesn't stretch. So the idea is just you want to limit movement, stabilize it. K-tape is the exact opposite. So K-tape, it stretches. And the idea is, you can wrap a joint. And what it does is it mechanically decompresses the skin and the underlying tissues. Um, so it's subtle, but it offers like a profoundly positive benefit in that it releases pressure from the free nerve endings responsible for pain, basically, and for sensing pain. So your skin can it does something similar to the scraping we were kind of talking about. It increases fluid dynamics to the injury site and reduces swelling. And this is a good thing because, as we described before, if you're clearing out this fluid and swelling, you enhance the lymphatic flow, you enhance blood flow to it, and you can achieve sort of a better range of motion. And this better range of motion is essential for kind of pushing out, the old fluid and getting rid of waste and getting new, good oxygen and nutrients and different growth factors, et cetera, in to help heal the tissue. So this is all very good. And the existence of this K-tape around a joint and it's releasing pressure from free nerve endings. It's also kind of stimulating sensory nerves, and it can actually enhance proprioception. So, if you're feeling something like your knee is hurting or something, and there may be certain if you put the K-tape on, you tend to feel the knee better and be aware of it. And this can be a good thing. So you basically have an enhanced feel of where your joint or muscle is in space when you K-tape. So a lot of good positive consequences of using K-tape if you have an injury, or you want to potentially enhance blood flow or enhance range of motion to a joint through kind of interesting mechanisms that aren't necessarily immediately obvious. And the last thing I want to talk about in my part is percussive therapy. So theraguns are the obvious thing here, and these serve similar benefit to foam rolling. You can really target, hypercontracted muscles and essentially trigger points or hot spots, little tight areas within your muscles. You want to basically enable them to relax. So you want to decompress the tissue, again, enhance movement in all directions, enhance range of motion. And this can also enhance neurosensory acuity. Kind of going back to what we talked about on the last slide, it enables you to feel the target tissue better. So you can better differentiate between 2 points near each other on the surface of your skin. You know, in studies, they did this after some percussive therapy. You can feel that all that better. But you know, it also can kind of release those nociceptors, those pain receptors also. So it's when you what the bottom line, what we're trying to do here is kind of release the fascia, get blood flow to these areas so that we can enhance the range of motion and continuously get better flow to and through the muscles, because that all of that enhances recovery. And again, a tight muscle can be a sore one because, you know, it's compressing nerves. So we want to release that. We want to relax these muscles. So percussive therapy, foam rolling, et cetera, it can also sort of send good kind of like inhibitory nerve signals or enhance inhibitory nerve signals in these muscles that can also kind of relax them, which is good. Anybody have any questions on any of that?
With respect to the percussive therapy, the Theragun app has like these routines. Is there any benefit to doing those, or is it just blast away whatever feels tight?
I think that the routines can be beneficial if we're talking about just general, you know, sort of recovery protocols. If we have a knot or we have a hot spot, yeah, then we want to target it. We kind of want to attack it a little bit more. Obviously, if you have a strain or there's a profound tear, we don't want to be smashing it with a Theragun or a boomstick or jamming a lacrosse ball in there if we're just making the tear or strain worse. But, you know, if we're talking about fluid buildup and decreased range of motion, we want to spend more time on those areas until we feel release. You know, it sounds like those, I'm not familiar with them, but it sounds like they're more general and they're almost certainly just good to do if they keep you engaged. And part of the benefit of doing that is you sort of scan your body, like at least every 2 times a week, you want to kind of go through basically your whole body and really kind of work everything out. And that Theragun protocol you're talking about it can be beneficial for identifying hot spots. But again, if you feel a hot spot, you want to spend a little bit more time on that and not just ignore it and go over it just because the Theragun is telling you to move on. But it's a good way to stay in touch and make sure that you're staying on top of recovery and, you know, tissue mobilization, joint mobilization.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. What else? Anybody have any other questions or anecdotes or thoughts about using these different protocols for tissue and joint mobilization?
Conrad, have you heard much about like Firefly technology and like the E-stim and have any thoughts on that? Someone recently brought it up to me and I wasn't super familiar, but like looked into it a little bit. But
Yeah, I mean, I think the mechanism is real, and I coach a few athletes who like them. I've used it and I like it. It's so basically it's electrical stimulation. You know, you put basically you send an electrical impulse kind of through your knee, essentially. So through the side of your knee, and it enhances blood flow to the legs. And you know, the increased blood flow is measurable, and you can wear it for a really long time. I know athletes who've worn them on planes because, you know, a lot of times you have fluid buildup or lack of circulation in the legs. And, you know, they've worn the Firefly, basically just like the E-stim. And it enables, they just feel better after the flight, better blood flow. So you don't have that kind of buildup. But yeah, it's interesting because I haven't heard, I remember a couple of years ago, they were advertising everywhere, but I haven't seen them as much. I think a lot of people, you know, got the subscriptions and they're just kind of getting it, and I do wonder how they're doing. But it's viable. You can be mobile in them, and again, you can wear it for hours. So it's a little bit more convenient than getting like an e-stim machine that they might have at the physical therapist or chiropractor, where you kind of have to sit there to use it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else use Firefly?
I don't use Firefly, but I have a Compex machine, which is so essentially like what you get at the PT or physical therapist or athletic trainer's office. And I've used that just I before workouts to warm up tight muscles, especially like IT band. So putting it on both sides of my legs to warm up either my calves or my IT band, and just to wake it up and get the blood flowing before I actually do any activity. And then also like as far as like when my back is really sore after like a long car ride or plane ride or time in the TT position, just to put just to put the electrode sensors on my back to loosen that up. That I found has helped just loosen up the muscles in a passive way, and a little bit more enjoyable than foam rolling it out.
That's interesting. The on long car rides using e-stim to
Just don't do it on your driving leg.
Yeah, that's good. What else? Anybody else have any anecdotes on any of this or thoughts? Nope.
A couple,
Go
cool tools that I've used just along all of these lines. One I've mentioned on Slack is the R8. Hold on, let me turn off my blur 1 second. So there we are. Hopefully that works there. It's the R8, which it's pretty much like a vice grip that goes over your leg, and you can roll it out that way. And it's easier to control on some muscles than a foam roller, because with foam rolling, you almost get like an ab workout trying to balance and figure out that point. And it's pretty much the exact same thing, but you just get more control over the pressure. And then the other one that I've used is the Theracane, which is like this little hook thing, and that's just kind of trigger point therapy and really works well, especially for the back, trying to get into those tight spots around the scapula and the shoulders, and the lower back, as well as the glutes. So those are just two target tools that I've liked to use to loosen up tight muscles.
Yeah, those are good. Another common one is using a barbell to kind of like roll out. I mean, you can really get into those muscles, and again, you're basically, everything is sort of doing the same thing. It's just getting in, loosening up the fascia, enhancing blood flow. But if you need to get deep, that can help. Well, if nothing else, I know that we have a couple other people wanting to talk. I don't know if Chris or Derek, if you guys wanted to go.
Yeah, I can jump into it. Let me share my screen here. Let's see.
You should be able to now.
Okay. All right, can you guys see that?
Yep.
So we've all seen them at every Ironman event. They have a booth, or now that's in the Ironman Village, where you have like 6 rows of Normatec boots. So I think they're pretty popular. A lot of people know of them. There's other devices that are compression boots out there that are competitors, but Hyperice, which is a competitor to Theragun, actually bought Normatec a couple years ago. But essentially what the boots are, they're an intermittent pneumatic compression, which has auxiliary chambers throughout the boot, or an arm sleeve. So they have sleeves as well for the arms that fill up with air. They compress on the body, and they move. The goal is for blood flow, to move the blood around. And as those chambers fill up with air, you feel the compression, and then they release, and then the next chamber fills up with air, and so on and so forth. Has everyone used them here before? I imagine most people have. Anyone have them?
I do.
Do you have?
Yep.
Yeah. And so I know we were talking about this last night, Conrad, and we've looked into this in the past, and the question is, what actually is happening. So, hyperice or normatec, they claim that it reduces muscle soreness, promotes recovery, and it boosts circulation. A lot of studies out there have talked about what's actually happening or what's not happening, and it is interesting. I think for the most part it is inconclusive. Many studies suggest that the intermittent pneumatic chambers or compression is not effective with reducing soreness or recovery in well-trained athletes. So athletes that are well-trained, and that's kind of like the point in some of these studies I read. And so many of us that are doing triathlons, I would consider probably well-trained athletes. There was some that suggested that there was a short-term relief with muscle soreness, and I'll get into that in a second here because these studies have some types of, I don't want to say flaws, but there's a couple issues, and I think the biggest thing is people like using something and then feeling it. Because when you do use the boots, you do feel it. You feel the pressure, you feel the sensation, and it feels good. So that kind of leads to the psychology and confidence part of it. And, I know Chris, you can talk a little bit more about this, but like, while there may not be a ton of studies that suggest the boots are actually helping promote recovery, if the athlete believes it's working, that placebo effect is real and it's probably worth using or continuing to use. Uh, Many athletes that we work with in Working Triathlete are obviously trying to, perform at the best that they can at the highest level they can. And having every psychological or confidence advantage is going to be beneficial. So one thing I thought was interesting, coming across a study where these boots were being used in non-athletes. So there's athletes, or I'm sorry, non-athletes. There's patients that were going to the hospital for knee surgeries or hip surgeries, and using the boots in conjunction with medication would help reduce the risk of blood clots. So a lot of hospitals now are using this as a protocol for at-risk patients for post surgeries. So that's about it for Normatec boots. At the end of the day, it's inconclusive with the benefits for promoting recovery, but if you believe it, it's worth doing.
Yeah, I know. I think the bottom line is there hasn't been any like, really good, strong studies that have supported, the benefits in accelerating recovery. And obviously they're expensive. What I do think they certainly do is they are a way for an athlete after, a hard session to kind of relax and almost certainly kind of enhance parasympathetic nervous system flow, which is good. It can kind of help recovery. So basically just relax, you sort of calm your sympathetic nervous system. So you're, less aroused, there's less epinephrine, cortisol, etc. All of that stuff can be catabolic, like cortisol can be catabolic. But I find that just kind of relaxing with the Normatec boots on, maybe reading a book, doing some work, it can kind of just get you in the recovery mindset, which I think is actually beneficial. And I think there probably are marginal benefits to, kind of flushing everything out. But yeah, it's I don't necessarily recommend them with the same fervor that I would recommend, say, foam rolling or even using a Theragun on hot spots.
Yeah, the cost of use is probably the biggest thing. Like a foam roller, or if you can't get a foam roller, buy a 2-liter bottle and fill it up with water, and that can be used as a foam roller too. But yeah, I mean, like the cost is one thing. Um, Obviously, I think we know enough people within the ecosystem that have them. So if people want to try them out and see, you can certainly do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely bring them to the camp, the Nashville camp. I'll bring them out. I'll try to remember to do that so people can try them if they haven't. What's next? Chris, do you wanna go now? Or did anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts on Normatec boots? Nope.
All right, I will let me see if I can share my slides 1 second. Um, all right. There we go. All right. Just one note before I get into the mental approach to recovery. Because I'm sure we've all been there of you've had a really tough workout, you've had a really tough race, or you've had a stressful day at work, and that all affects motivation, um, whether it's motivation, willingness to get up out of bed, and all of these things that impact your workouts and just your day-to-day life. So what I wanted to focus on in this segment is just how can we bounce back psychologically from workouts? All physiological approaches aside, if our mind isn't ready to train or doesn't want to train or is unmotivated to train, how can we overcome that? Because your body might be saying, yeah, let's go, but if your mind is fatigued, it's going to be tougher for you to get into that workout and make it a beneficial workout and be able to get the most out of your body. So I kind of wanted to approach this idea of recovery from the psychological aspect. And I did a little poking around on Google Scholar, and I found 2 articles looking at specifically meditation and how that affects recovery. And the reason why I chose these 2 articles is because they focus on athletes in particular. There's a large body of research out there on meditation and its effect on whether it's addiction recovery or other types of recovery. But I chose these two research articles because they focused on athletes. And the first one I found was one that focused on elite volleyball players. And they did a controlled study where they divided up a volleyball team into 3 groups. You had the control group who didn't do any type of relaxation or mindfulness training. You had a music-based group, so one that listened to relaxing music after hard activities, and then you had a mindfulness group that did mindfulness after hard work in competition or hard training sessions in competition, and then also before bed. And what they found is that after doing mindfulness and specifically a body scan, so 10 minutes of going through your body and breathing into different areas of your body and focusing on how different areas of your body is feeling, that the mental fatigue post-competition, it was reduced compared to just music alone, as well as the control group. They didn't find any difference in perceived physical recovery, and they measured that just by how physically ready are you to train after competition and tough training sessions. But from a mental side of things, the mental fatigue was reduced doing a body scan. And what I found interesting about this is it wasn't just relaxation, because they teased that out by controlling that with the music group. It wasn't just relaxation that was reducing the mental fatigue. It was breathing into different part of your bodies and connecting with your bodies, and that's what reduced the mental fatigue. There were limitations to the study. It was on volleyball players, so not necessarily endurance athletes, and also on a small sample size. They only had 30 total participants, so 10 in each group. But the findings were promising as far as reducing mental fatigue. Another paper that I found looked at elite soccer players and the effects on meditation. Once again, the type of meditation that they focused on was body scans as well as mindful yoga. So yoga mixed where you're really focusing on different parts of your body and breathing into different parts of your body and releasing those tight muscles, as well as standard breath meditation. And they looked at specifically its effect on HRV. And HRV has become, I wouldn't say it's the gold standard, but it's definitely a way for researchers to physiologically track recovery and readiness to train. And they found that meditation didn't change the HRV, which was interesting here because if in non-athlete studies, meditation has been shown to improve HRV by increasing the parasympathetic response and decreasing the sympathetic response. So I found that no changes, at least in the soccer players, of HRV. Interesting in this study, and I think it's worth diving into that in future studies. Hopefully, we'll dive into that more in the athlete population. But what they did find is that with this meditation protocol, that athletes had decreased stress, improved enjoyment of the sport, and improved intrinsic motivation. And all three of those things, while not necessarily directly impacting recovery in a similar rate to HRV, if you have less stress, if you're enjoying the sport more, and you have increased intrinsic motivation, that I feel is recovery enough that you're going to continue doing the sport. You're not going to drop out. You're going to be engaged in the sport for longer through those mechanisms. So while not a direct link to improved recovery, an indirect link to recovery through those mechanisms, which I found interesting. So those are two studies that I found. There was a systematic analysis that that found 6 studies related to benefits of meditation to athletic recovery, but they also found that more research is needed into this field from a scientific standpoint rather than solely subjective findings. So the takeaway message here is types of meditation that you can work into your own day-to-day life to help with recovery from tough workouts, from tough competitions. Breathing meditation, so that's there are a couple different ways you can do it. Headspace and Calm are both apps that have really good guided meditations. But also, if you're not looking to use an app and you're looking for a quick breath meditation, doing something like box breathing, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold kind of with an empty lungs for 4 counts, and repeat that. That's a great breathing meditation that I like. You can do on the go, doing a body scan, and then also mindful yoga, all different types of meditation that you can work into your own training and day-to-day life to help with these different mechanisms of recovery. And then before I go on to my last point here, any questions that you've got regarding kind of the mental and psychological aspects of recovery? Sweet. All right. One last note I have is thinking of recovery, not necessarily from a prehab and stretching and muscle release standpoint, but what actually happens when you get injured, and how do you bounce back from that mentally and psychologically, because it can be pretty derailing to have an injury. And I'm sure we've all been there where we either have an ankle sprain or IT band issues or swimmer shoulder or any type of injury that is common, whether it's acute or chronic. How can you bounce back from that and stay involved in the sport and not get completely frustrated that you check out? And from what I've seen of the research, staying involved with your team has really big benefits for improving mental health during the recovery process of your injury. So finding ways, even if you cannot work out with the team, finding ways to still be involved with the team and involved with practices. The research that I've seen have been on college team-based athletes, but still staying involved in the team as much as you can has reduced that depression and sad feelings of losing something that you love and losing that identity that you have when an injury arises. Focusing on what you can do, so the locus of control of realizing that, I can't run right now, but hey, I can double down on my swimming and biking so that when I am recovered from whatever is preventing me from running, my swim and bike is going to be even stronger than it was. So switching your focus on, oh, I can't run, to, oh, I can do these other activities, can help with that mental aspect of recovery when injured. And then also reminding yourself to take it day by day. It can be frustrating. Recovery from an injury is tough. It is not linear. It's very much up and down each and every day, and reminding yourself to take it day by day. What can I do today to make myself a better athlete and a better triathlete and a more recovered triathlete? Is an important reminder when you're struggling with an injury or a condition where you're not, that inhibits your training. And that's what I got. One second, let me stop share here. All right. Switch back. There we are. Awesome. Any questions on kind of the psychology there? I will dig up those. I can post the links to those studies, both the elite volleyball and then the elite soccer players as well, on Slack, underneath the webinar, if you want to check out those articles. And also the elite, both actually have a pretty good detailed flow chart of what they did for the body scan, if you want to check out that as well. One final note about the placebo effect, because the belief and believing that something is working it's a very powerful mechanism. And one, I can't remember who did this study off the top of my head, but I do remember reading it, of researchers who recruited a bunch of cyclists and athletes, and they gave them a liquid that they were supposed to put into warm baths that was supposed to help with their recovery. And they gave this special liquid to a bunch of athletes, said, use this in a bath every single night for 2 weeks. And they monitored the effects of that, and they found that athletes who did use this magical solution recovered, or felt that they recovered faster and were able to engage in harder training sessions, when in fact it was just dishwasher fluid that they were putting into the bath. So placebo is a huge effect. So if you think that something is working, whether it's the Speedhound boots or the Normatec boots or the Hyper Ice or whatever gizmo or powder or mechanism of recovery that you feel like is doing a difference, and that you believe is doing a difference, chances are, just through the placebo effect, it might be having an effect.
Thanks. That's awesome. Good stuff. And then, speaking of things you can do to accelerate recovery, I know that so Becca is going to lead a session on Friday at noon Central that's going to involve maybe some parasympathetic nervous system activation. I don't know if it's going to be straight up meditating, but it's going to help kind of mobility, maybe a little bit of strength and recovery.
Yeah. So I'll just explain a little bit what we're going to be doing there. I'd say probably like half of it will be more focused on like core strength, and core meaning a lot of things. People often think about like, oh, your abs, but core is like really anything that is supporting your spine and helping stabilize your body. So yes, that's your abdominals. Yes, it's your obliques, but it's also your chest, your back, and importantly, like your hips, and glutes and all that. So kind of like activating all those different types of muscles, and deep core activation has become a really big topic recently. So some of those types of things, but also, core exercises that are not just a crunch or a sit up, but more maybe specific to our types of movements. As a precursor, like planks are really good because it's activating a lot of things at once. It's kind of in positions you might be when you're actually moving. So those are all good things you want to focus on, not just like your typical like sit-ups and crunches. So like activating all your muscles. And really the purpose of this is it increases your stabilization in your torso. It helps you maintain good posture, which is important, especially when you're really fatigued. Like so on the run, at the end of a 70.3 or an Ironman, you're for sure going to be fatigued. If you have a strong core, that'll help you maintain good running posture. It's been proven, like having a core routine to improve both your static balance, your core endurance, and importantly, your running economy. So especially at kind of the distance and speeds we're going, like having a really efficient running economy is going to be really beneficial to us as long course triathletes, and even short course if that's more your thing. But it allows you to have optimal force production and to control, support, and move your extremities in ways you need to. And there's also been some like research that it actually can facilitate recovery from injury and help with chronic back pain and things like that. So even if you might not be on like firing on all cylinders, like having a core routine can be important, even if you're like struggling from, Achilles tear. You could still be doing core and that'll help, whatnot. And then the other kind of aspect of this, I guess you might call it an injury prevention session, is kind of what I like to call mobility and stability piece. And think of this as like range of motion and how your joints can work in ways that how they're going to be working when we're doing our sports. So what, in the run, swim, bike, and run, making sure all our different joints and muscles are able to move in the ways that they were going to be required of. So areas that are like usually like targeted and could use work are ankles, and like your ankle stability, flexion, all those different types of things. Your big toe is super important in running. So we'll have some big toe exercises, which are boring, but useful. Your hips, most people have a lack of hip extension. And that impacts, your running form, and also like a lot of lower body issues stem from issues in your hips. So, having strong hips, doing things like hamstring bridges and clamshells, and a lot of, different small exercises that kind of activate different small muscles, and just like teaching your body how to move in a certain way, which it might be able to do, but it just doesn't know it's able to do that. So then when you get into that point in a race, or even in a workout, your body needs to be an automatic response to trigger those muscles, trigger your tendons, all that. So we kind of do these exercises to train the body so that it can activate those muscles initially. It can move in a range of motion that it needs to be efficient, and ultimately just keep you injury free. So that's kind of the goal is for that. And yeah, so these things, while some of it will be a little bit more like strength focused, some of them might just be like balance focused, or doing these small static movements. You could probably do it in any clothes you want, though it might be more comfortable if you're in athletic clothes. If we keep, the session this week will be like fully, like you won't need any equipment, but some things that can help with a lot of this are resistance bands or stretch cords. Those are really good at facilitating these different type of movements and workouts. So having like a band that you can put around your knees or your ankles, and then also like longer stretch cords are good, especially for the upper body and working on like your rotation in your shoulders. So just some things to look into if you don't have those already. That's about all I have, unless anyone has any specific questions on that, or just come on Friday and see what it's all about.
Can't wait. So how long is it going to be?
Think we're saying it's noon to 12:30, 30 minutes,
Okay.
but it'll probably be about like 25 minutes of like actual stuff
Cool.
going on. And I'm sure the first week might be like a little bit, slower going, figuring out some glitches. I'm probably going to do it on my phone so I can show you more specifically versus just like a static computer. But yeah, people can like, please reach out or speak up if you can't see something or something's unclear. But it's kind of the plan.
Cool. Awesome. Anybody have any questions on anything we talked about so far? Nope. I know we're coming up on the hour, so we might answer the questions that were posed in the Slack on Slack. But thanks for coming out, everybody, and keep the conversation going on Slack. Let's keep talking about recovery through March, and then April will be hydration and race fueling month, and precision hydration. So Lexi, a dietitian for precision hydration, will lead a webinar next month. So that's another good one to look forward to. But that concludes March's webinar. But again, reach out with any questions and keep the convo going. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Thanks, Conrad.
See ya.